Joining me now is a member of Congress to help us understand how we got into this situation, Congressman Connie Mack. Welcome. Look, how did we get in this situation? You're one of the guys.
Well, you know, first of all, the guest you had on just before, Neil, I think his name was, you know, that is such a horrible story. And I think Secretary LaHood did a great job earlier on your program talking about how the Congress needs to come back and fix this. And I agree with that. Here's the problem. So we passed a bill in the House, reauthorization bill. It went to the Senate. The one person that has the power to bring it up for a vote chose not to, and that is Senator Reid. So I would say that, and maybe the Secretary didn't want to say it, but Senator Reid should call the Senate back in, take up the bill, and pass it, and let's move on. If there's some changes they want to make to it, then they can offer those changes. But they haven't. The Senate has been missing on a lot of these big issues. And so I think Secretary LaHood was right that the House passed a bill. It is in the Senate, and the Senate chose not to bring it up for a vote.
You know what that sounds like, though, to a guy like Neil and, frankly, to a guy like me who covers this? It's the Republicans in the House. It's the Democrats in the Senate. It sounds like exactly what we had on the debt deal, yet another partisan fight while people are losing their jobs.
Again,
this is the thing that America hates Congress for.
And I completely get it, and I'm frustrated, and they have a right to be angry. But there's one person who can solve this problem, and that's Harry Reid.
Yeah, and Harry Reid would say you guys could have solved the problem on your side too by being careful about not putting riders onto this that we're going to start a firestorm. They talk about a clean bill. What about just keep the financing the way it is and move forward? Specifically because our economy's in trouble.
Well, I would say this. Then the Senate could have passed their own bill, but they chose not to. The Senate has been, they haven't been acting. It's almost like they're paralyzed in, if they act, they're going to get in trouble. They feel like they're going to get blamed for something if they don't act, so they're doing nothing. Meanwhile, the House continues to do its job. We continue to pass appropriations bills. We continue to negotiate and pass bills in the debt ceiling issue that we just had. The FAA, we passed that bill and send it to the Senate. It's time that the Senate get to work. And the American people, just like you said, they're tired of this. They're tired of this back and forth. But at the same time, this is our process.
Yeah, I understand this is our process, but you know the complaint that so many people have right now is that the process itself is broken. That is so hyper-partisan that, you know, and I know, there are plenty of people on the Hill who are reasonable people. But they walk beneath that dome, and it's as if they've lost their minds. And suddenly they can't carry on a reasonable conversation. It seems to me that it would not be crazy for people from your side, from the Republican side, from the Democratic side, to be able to get together and say, this FAA thing is actually pretty important. None of us need 70,000 people lining up for unemployment. Let's reach a deal now. What is so poisonous about that? Why isn't that happening?
You know, I can't answer that, but I'll tell you one thing. I know the chairman of the Transportation Committee. He's from Florida, Congressman Mack, and he is a guy that looks for compromise. He's a guy that looks for a way to get things done. I know that he has been trying to work on these things. We passed a bill. The Senate, Harry Reid has the opportunity to bring that bill. He could do it tomorrow and pass that bill, and this problem could be solved. Now, if there's some other changes they want to do, we can have that discussion. But right now, for people not to get paid because the Senate chose not to pass this bill is outrageous, and Secretary LaHood has a right to be angry. Neil has a right to be angry, and the American people have a right.
At the same time, you're going after an airport in Harry Reid's own state with some of the language in this thing. I mean, you can understand why he wouldn't respond well to that. Look, a Republican senator, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson, said that it's not honorable for the House to add extraneous amendments to the spending bill. Do you think... Look, whether you can say it on this or not, I don't know. Do you think the hardball tactics on both sides in D.C. have gone too far?
I think that there are passionate people on both sides. And when you have passionate people on both sides, they're going to fight for their position. The problem is...
But there are passionate people in this country about some kind of agreement, too. There are actually more people passionate about an agreement who are really angry at the left and the right. What do you say to those people?
Well, let me finish. So there are people who are very passionate on both sides. But somebody like the chairman of the Transportation Committee, Congressman Mack, he's someone that looks to find ways to come to a compromise. And what it tells me is that the Senate hasn't been able to even try to work with the chairman of the House committee on this issue. It's not like Congressman Micah would just not listen to the other side. He would look for a way to come up with that compromise. So what it tells me is, and if you look at the last year or so, the Senate has not been willing to take up legislation and act. They've been sitting on their hands, and now we're seeing people suffer for it.
Let me ask you about this. Congress overall, Senate and the House, terrible, terrible, terrible approval ratings in this country. The people think very badly of Congress overall. Do you think well of Congress?
No, I think it is dysfunctional right now.
What can you do to fix your part of it and make it better?
Well,
because it seems like unless you guys start doing it one at a time, it's not going to get fixed.
Here's what I will do. I will continue to stand up and fight for the things that I believe in. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not willing to listen to someone who has a different opinion than mine. I will listen. But until they can prove the case, I believe in certain things. I believe we should tax less. I believe we should regulate less. I think we could solve this debt and deficit problem by freezing spending, cutting 1% a year for 6 years, capping spending at 18% of GDP. We'll balance the budget in 8 years. The penny plan.
The penny plan.
The
People can read about it online.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is. We can balance our budget in 8 years. Republicans, Democrats, Independents all like it, understand it, can get their arms around it. We can solve these problems, but we have to come together to do it.
All right, Representative Connie Mack, I appreciate you being here. Next time when you come back, I'm going to ask you, what have you done since the last time to make it better?
All right.
We appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much.
Still ahead.